Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto become Demon King and harem with female Kurama? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Engulfing Silence for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. When Uzumaki Naruto had been told that he and his team would be entering the Chunin exams, a prestigious tournament-style exam that promoted a village's genin and offered a chance at promotion by his sensei, Hatake Kakashi, he had been expecting to fight strong opponents and overpower them with the sheer amount of awesome he possessed. He would beat the crap out of every team that came his way, he would kick ass, take names and get promoted. Then Sakura-chan would realize that Sasuke team was nothing more than a loser with a big clan name and fall in love with him, and soon after that the old man would name him Hokage. Yes, those were the thoughts going through the head of one Uzumaki Naruto when he had first learned he would be in the Chunin exams. What he got instead was a fight with some freaky kunoichi from Kusagaku, village hidden in the grass, who was not only ridiculously strong, but also had her disgusting tongue wrapped around his neck. "Let me go of me, you fucking hag. Let go or I'll rip that damn tongue out of your mouth and shove it up your ass," Naruto shouted, his voice a gravely snarl that didn't sound entirely human as he kicked and struggled within the grass the Kusa kunoichi. His struggling didn't do much, however, as the woman's grip over him was quite strong, despite the appendage being used. "My, how interesting," the kunoichi said, ignoring the boy's rather crass words as she looked at Naruto's now red eyes. "When your emotions are running high and the risk of death is great, the seal must leak Kyuubi's chakra. This is a most interesting development. Unfortunately for you, Sasuke-kun is the only one I wish to test right now. So you'll have to go." The fingers of the kunoichi's left hand glowed in a light purple as she slammed them into the seal on the blonde's stomach. "Gojyo Fuyin, 5-pronged seal." Naruto let out an intense roar of pain as the woman slammed her hands into his abdomen. Every muscle in his body spasmed as his body lost control of his normal functions. It felt like his finger had gotten stuck in a socket plug, or a current of lightning was racing through his veins. The soon became so intense that his eyes rolled into the back of his head, and his body slumped in the kunoichi's grasp. Now that that's over with, the kunoichi tossed Naruto away, not caring if he fell to his death. The blonde was lucky Sakura decided to do something useful for once and managed to pin him to a tree with a well-placed kunai. The Kusa kunoichi turned her attention back to Sasuke, who was still quivering in fear. "Now my dear Sasuke-kun, show me how strong you are." Birth of the new Demon King. Naruto gave a soft groan as he opened his eyes, blinking a few times as he sat up. "Great," Naruto groaned as he looked around the dank and darkened hallway. It wasn't hard to recognize where he was. If the craggy and cracked walls didn't give it away, then the knee-deep water soaking the floor would. "Looks like I'm in a sewer of some kind. How the hell did I get here?" He frowned as he looked around. This place looked nothing like the sewers of Konoha, and he had traveled those sewers many times to escape the occasional drunk who wanted revenge against the Kyuubi brat. The main difference he noticed were the pipes that were traveling along and through the walls and ceiling. They were glowing blue. He absently wondered what the hell was in those pipes to make them glow blue. His thoughts were derailed when his eyes saw that one lone pipe was red. Standing up, he began walking down the hall, following the red pipe, which was the only one that traveled down the hall. When he came out, he found himself standing in front of a gate, a very large gate, nearly 20 times his size and with fairly large steel bars. In the middle was a large piece of paper with a kanji for Fuyin, seal, on it. However, it was, surprisingly enough, not the gate that got his attention, but instead the two people that were standing near the gate. The first was a man with long whitish blonde hair that went down to his back in a strand of messy spikes. His clothes consisted of a yellow headband, a yellow obi sash, and white pants. He was not wearing any shirt, allowing Naruto to see that the man was fucking ripped, lean hard muscles compacted on his frame giving him a look that spoke of both immense and power and overwhelming speed. His face twisted into a smirk as he saw Naruto. The second figure was that of a young teenage girl maybe 4 years older than Naruto, kneeling before this man in a bow of submission just behind the cage. She had long red hair with streaks of gold that were highlighted in it. Her long locks went into 9 ornate braids that reached her lower back. 2 bangs framed a face that was beyond perfect, a slight mixture between oval and heart-shaped. Her face had a regal beauty about it, with higher than average cheekbones that still managed to retain a soft look, a small button nose and cupid bow, lips which were a rich red color. Naruto felt it would be very easy to mistake her as some kind of harem princess, or at the very least a rich noble. Her skin was a pale porcelain color, giving her a delicate and smooth as silk look. She was wearing a red kimono that went down to her feet, with 2 slits running down the sides, and a V-neck cut in front, showing a little of her generous assets. She had an hourglass figure that civilian girls could only dream of, and even the most active kunoichi would kill for. All in all, she was very beautiful. In fact, Naruto had never met anyone prettier than this girl, and considering he had met the likes of Kurenai and Anko, that was saying something. However, the most notable features on the girl were the 9 foxtails laying limply behind her. The man prodded the woman who was kneeling and turned her attention towards the blonde. Naruto saw the woman's eyes were a deep and intoxicating color of red with black slits running down the middle. He also took note of the shame that was currently written all over her face. Absently, he wondered just how he could read her face so well, but didn't dwell on the thought for long. As Naruto walked up to them, the man grinned. "I'm pleased to see you, Gaki. I had been hoping we would meet soon. But that damn seal kept getting in the way." At the word seal, Naruto stopped walking. He looked at the man for several seconds, before turning his gaze onto the woman. He looked back at the cage, specifically the seal, before things managed to click together for him. "You're the Kyuubi, aren't you?" Naruto asked, turning his eyes back towards the woman. He did not know how he knew this, well, aside from the 9 tails giving her away. However, Naruto would have normally not noticed those details right away, despite how glaringly obvious they were. Yet even as he wondered over his new sense of observation, he could feel that something inside of him was different than the few moments before he had come to wherever he was. It felt like he was undergoing some odd change that was beginning to affect him. It was as if a door had opened in his mind and allowed him to think more clearly. He didn't know what it was, or why it was happening, but he was too grateful at being able to actually think in a more logical manner to care. "Hi," the woman said, her voice cracking with raw emotion. Naruto frowned at the tone of voice, even as the woman continued speaking. I am so sorry for what I have done to you, Naruto-sama." Naruto raised an eyebrow at the honorific, but did not comment on that. Instead, he chose to comment on his most recent observations of her character. "You don't seem to be some kind of demon of mass destruction like I had been told." "That is because she was not quite herself when she attacked your village," Raisin interrupted, bringing Naruto's attention from the woman to him. Seeing that he now held the boy's attention, the powerfully built man continued, "She was manipulated into attacking Konoha." Naruto frowned for a moment, not quite sure what to make of this knowledge. Contrary to popular belief, he was not as stupid as he looked. Ignorant? Yes. Naive? Definitely. Slow? Maybe. But not stupid. If he had been, then Naruto never would have survived past his 4th birthday. His problem had always been his notoriously short attention span, which was due to the nearly unlimited amount of energy he possessed. That overabundance of energy made it hard for him to concentrate on any one thing that he found uninteresting for too long. However, even with his newfound ability to think, he did not know what to make of the knowledge that had just been presented to him. In the end, he decided to put what he had heard on hold for a moment, so he could deal with something less troublesome than the possibility that Kyuubi may not be a raging beast of hate and destruction. With that thought in mind, Naruto turned his complete attention on the male of the duo, and in a blunt manner said, "And who the hell are you?" "My name is Raisin," the man said with a smirk. He sounded amused by the blonde's blunt words, and perhaps even a little impressed. "I am one of the 3 demon kings of Makai, but more importantly, I am one of your ancestors." Naruto's eyes widened at the comment, surprise overtaking his features. My ancestor? This was definitely not something he had ever expected, though he had never expected to meet his tenant either. His mind went to thoughts on what Raisin meant when he said Demon King. It was definitely a title of some kind, and it was obvious from the way Kyuubi was being so subversive to the man that it meant he held a higher status than Kyuubi herself. Did that mean this man was more powerful than the supposed most powerful bijou in existence? Raisin nodded. "That's right. You are a direct descendant of me, and I suppose, in a way, my successor." "Successor?" Naruto asked, confused. "So I'm a demon?" Had he heard that before coming here? Wherever here was, he would have been depressed at the knowledge that he was no longer human. Or had never been human. But even as he felt the small amount of sadness and fear creep into him, he could feel it being squashed by something else inside of him. Something that was changing him. Maybe it was a demon's pride, maybe it was just accepting the inevitable, or maybe his whole outlook on life was being fundamentally shifted to one where he looked on the world and everything in it with apathy. He couldn't say for sure, all he knew was that he didn't particularly care that he was a demon. Well, part demon anyways, answered Raisin, you are my heir. You see, I died around 600 years ago after I had fallen in love with a human. She was a doctor and had nursed me back to health after I had been injured. After that I promised never to eat another human again. Wait a minute! Naruto screamed, interrupting the man as an old part of him came to the fore. The incredibly stupid part that often put its foot in his mouth. What do you mean you ate humans? The thought of killing didn't bother him like it probably should have. Indeed, while Naruto had never thought about killing before, and it had even repulsed him when he had learned how closely entwined death was with being a shinobi during the mission to Nami no Kuni. The thought of killing humans now didn't bother him at all anymore. It was just another one of those changes he was likely undergoing. He didn't particularly have any feelings on whether or not humans were killed. But eating one sounded disgusting. Stop yelling, damn it! Raisin yelled back. Yes, I ate humans. I could not gain sustenance from anything else. They were my source of food and strength. However, after I fell in love, I vowed not to, and in the end I died. So how are you here then? Naruto asked as he looked around. A frown marred his face as he just now remembered that he had no clue where he was. And where the hell is here anyways? This is called a mindscape, Raisin said, a fanged smirk on his face. More specifically, this is your mindscape. This is my mind? Naruto asked, receiving a nod. A disgusted look soon passed over the blonde's face. Kami, this sucks. My mind is a dump. Yes, it is, Raisin said, snickering a bit. Naruto glared at him, but it did not seem to affect the man. However, that is not really your fault. You see, the seal that keeps Kyuubi here at bay also keeps your potential at bay. What do you mean? Asked Naruto with a quizzical expression. I doubt he meant to, but when your father sealed the Kyuubi inside of you. My father! Naruto shouted again, his eyes narrowing. You mean to tell me my father is the reason I'm hated? Didn't I tell you to shut up? Raisin yelled, unleashing his power on the blonde, making Naruto tremble and fall to his knees, gasping for breath. Yes, your father is the one who sealed Kyuubi inside of you. He did not have much choice. It was either that or allow you and your village to be burned to the ground. Now don't interrupt me again, or you will regret it. Naruto gulped and quickly nodded. This man's power was on a scale of its own. The blonde couldn't help but feel like he was in the presence of Kami. That was how powerful the man was. He had no desire to test this Raisin's patience. He vowed to keep his mouth shut until this Raisin finished speaking. Good, Raisin said, letting up on his pressure and allowing Naruto to stand, albeit shakily. Now, as I was saying, your father, who was also my descendant, was forced to seal Kyuubi into you. However, this also locked away nearly all of your potential, since that potential is almost all demonic in origin, and the seal was designed to lock away demons. Almost? Naruto questioned. Yes, almost, Raisin said. You see, you are also of the Uzumaki clan, a clan that, like the Uchiha and Senju clans, is descended from the man you know as the Rikudo Sannin. Raisin quickly saw the blonde's blank look and sighed. He had forgotten that while Naruto may be able to think more clearly, he still didn't know anything due to his not paying attention in class. And he wasn't even sure the boys' academy would have taught about the Rikudo Sannin. Thus, he decided to explain. The Rikudo Sannin is a legend amongst the humans, and was considered to be the first shinobi. He was the creator of modern-day ninjutsu, and was considered a god amongst your people. Raisin paused, allowing that information to sink in, before he continued. But that is neither here nor there. What is important is that thanks to what that snake-summoning ninja did to you, it blocked off the affects of the seal, granting you access to your power and heritage. I see, Naruto said, going into a look of deep thought for a moment. That's why I feel so different, isn't it? Yes, Raisin said, sounding pleased that Naruto realized that fact so quickly. With your demonic heritage unlocked, your mental paradigm is shifting. I'm sure you can already feel some of the differences. You're thinking more clearly, your logical thought processes are working much more efficiently, allowing you to come to conclusions that you have never been able to before. You're more observant as well. These are all small changes in your psyche that are being affected by your demonic side being unsealed. Naruto nodded his head, before getting to something he had wanted to know since showing up in his mind. That still doesn't explain why you are here. Isn't that obvious? Raisin asked rhetorically. I was summoned here to help bring out your full potential. Naruto blinked a few times. And how are you going to do that? The rather insane-looking grin that Raisin gave him sent shivers down Naruto's spine. That should be easy. I'm going to beat the shit out of you until you get stronger. Before Naruto knew what was happening, Raisin appeared right in front of him, smashing a fist into the blonde's stomach and sending him flying. Birth of the new Demon King. Sakura did her best trying to keep an active vigil over the love of her life, one Uchiha Sasuke. However, if the bags under her eyes, the way her head kept lolling down, and her completely slouched posture was any indication, the girl was exhausted beyond all belief. She had been awake for almost 24 hours now, foregoing even short naps, since she did not know if or when an enemy would attack. Sakura knew she had to keep constantly alert, constantly vigil. Yet, even as these thoughts crossed her mind, her head once more began to nod off, eyes closing as exhaustion started setting in. Crack! It snapped back up when she heard the sound of a twig snapping. Her eyes now wider, Sakura's head swiveled around to see a squirrel running towards her. She gave a sigh of relief when she realized it was not an enemy. However, her eyes widened again when she saw where it was running. In an act of desperation, she threw a kunai at it. Luckily for the squirrel, it hit the ground right in front of it, causing the creature to squeak and run off. She let out a relieved breath as she watched the small forest critter scurry away, then turned back to watch her teammates. Once more, Sakura attempted to keep her silent vigil. She had no clue how long she sat there, staring at her teammates and occasionally looking around at the surrounding forest, but soon enough, her head began to nod and her eyes began to close. That was when she heard a chuckle coming from in front of her. Looking up, it was to see the 3 Oto genin that had attacked Kabuto before the first exam. The boy on the far left had spiky, dark hair and dark eyes. A large beige t-shirt covered his upper body with the word death inscribed upon it in kanji on the front. He also had a pair of snake-patterned pants, 2 black strips fastening his shirt to him around the shoulder areas, black sandals, a snake-patterned scarf around his neck, and a headband secured tightly around his head. The guy in the middle, though he was slouched over, it was hard to tell just how tall he was due to this fact, but Sakura figured he'd at least be as tall as the other male in the group. He had bandages covering most of his face with the exception of the area around his left eye, had a large poncho with incredibly long sleeves, a snake-patterned scarf around his neck, and a straw raincoat protruding from his back where the scarf went around. The final member of their team was a girl, who had dark-colored eyes and extremely long black hair nearly reaching the ground, and was tied at the end by a violet ribbon. She was fair-looking, with a green vest similar to a flak jacket covering her upper body, a snake-patterned scarf adorned around her neck, a pair of pants of the same color, and sandals. All of them had a cocky-looking smirk on their faces, well, the 2 whose faces could be seen. She could not tell if the one with his head wrapped in bandages did or not, but figured it was safe to assume he did. "Looks like you've been up all night," came the smug voice from slouched man in the middle. "Now if you don't mind, why don't you wake up the Uchiha? We're here to fight him." It was clear this man was the spokesperson and leader of the group. While he was talking, the other 2 just leered at the pinkette. "What do you want here? I mean, what do you really want?" asked Sakura. "I know Orochimaru is calling the shots from the shadows." Her words caused the trio to widen their eyes in recognition of the name. "You guys work for him, don't you? Tell me what that mark he put my Sasuke-kun is? I wonder what that man is up to." Dosu wondered out loud. There was something going on here that he wasn't getting. Out of the 3 of them, he knew what the mark the girl was talking about was, having seen it on Orochimaru's elite before. Why would their leader give the brat they were supposed to kill such a powerful mark? He shook the thought off. Who was he to question Orochimaru's methods? Humph, I can't stand hearing some snot-nosed little brat talking down to me like this. First I'll kill you, little girl, and then I'm gonna kill Sasuke. Zaku prepared to charge the girl. "Wait, Zaku!" Dosa ordered, getting his teammate to stop. The man walked forwards until he stopped at the spot where Sakura threw the kunai. Kneeling down on the grass, he ran his hand over the area. The color of this soil is the kind that shows it's recently been dug up, and this kind of grass doesn't grow in the forest of death. It looks like you tried to set a trap for us, rather poorly I might add. Sakura paled, causing the 3 Oto ninja to smirk before they leapt over the ground. Before they reached the apex of their jump, Sakura smirked, using the kunai in her hand to cut a strand of ninja wire attached to the kunai embedded in the ground next to her. As the second wire was cut, a large log came flying towards the 3 Oto genin. While the 3 Oto ninja were slightly surprised at the second trap, it wasn't so surprising that they couldn't do anything to defend themselves. Dosa placed a hand with the odd metal gauntlet on the log and channeled some chakra into it. The result shocked Sakura as the log was split in two, leaving the trio's progress to her unimpeded. Her eyes widened as the 3 descended towards them. As her mind registered that she was going to die, a loud shout of Konoha Senpu, "Leave Hurricane!" distracted her from the defeatist thought, and a green blur appeared in front of the 3 Oto genin, knocking each of them away with a kick. As the green blur stopped moving, Sakura managed to recognize the familiar figure. Lee! She thought, confused. She remembered how he had fought and defeated Sasuke before the first stage of the exams. Why would he help her? Who the hell are you? Zaku shouted as he stood up and rubbed his sore cheek. I am Konoha's beautiful green beast, Rock Lee, proclaimed the bull-cut, spandex-wearing genin. Lee, what are you doing here? Asked a bewildered Sakura. The boy looked back at her and grinned. I will always appear whenever you are in danger, Sakura-san. He reached over towards his shoulder and gently grabbed the squirrel sitting on it, before setting the woodland creature on the ground. It's all thanks to you, little guy. Sakura gave the boy a smile. She may not like him, but at least he was doing something to protect her. Thank you, Lee. Lee gave her a thumbs up before turning to the Oto genin. I said it once before, I'll protect you till the day I die. Dosu eyed the green-clad genin wearily. He knew better than to judge the boy because of his terrible fashion sense. That speed he had shown proved he was good. No matter how good he is, he's no match for all 3 of us, Dosu thought as he began to advance towards Lee. Darting forward, Dosu uncovered the odd gauntlet he was wearing, rearing his fist back to strike at the genin. Much to his shock, said boy waited until he was halfway there before slamming his hands into the ground and pulling out a large chunk of rock and dirt. Dosu's arm hit the rocks, causing it to explode. While I have not seen you fight, I remember seeing you use that strange gauntlet against Kabuto-san, Lee stated calmly. Because I don't know what it does, logic dictates that I shouldn't let you hit me with it. Dosu narrowed his one good eye as he landed on the ground before rushing back towards the Konoha genin. Lee waited for his opponent to calm calmly, and when Dosu was in range, struck out with a right-left combination. The right fist was blocked, but the left happened too fast for Dosu to see it until it was too late. Dosu stumbled back and was then kicked in the ribs, and went flying back a ways. Grunting, he got back up and was forced to jump out of the way when Lee sent a punch at him that was strong enough to make a crater when it hit the ground. Lee stood back up and faced Dosu, who came back at him. Dosu swung at Lee with the arm that did not have the gauntlet attached to it. Lee blocked the arm, grabbed onto his as he threw his opponent into a tree, leaving a small impression. Dosu narrowed his visible eye as he pushed himself out of the impression he was in before charging at Lee again. Realizing that straightforward tactics wouldn't work, he decided a little deception was in order. Coming in, Dosu made a feint with a high punch. When Lee moved to block him, he switched attacks and came in with a kick that caught Lee unawares. By the time Lee had recovered, Dosu was nowhere to be seen. A kick to the back of his head sent Lee stumbling forward before he felt a hand grip his leg and toss him into the air, then slam him into the ground. Lee got back to his feet and searched for Dosu. As he did, he felt a presence behind and saw Dosu coming in with his gauntlet-covered fist reared back. I am sorry, Gai-sensei, but I must use that jutsu, thought Lee as he unwound his bandages. As Dosu got within striking range, Lee disappeared from view before appearing below him and kicking the Oto genin in the chin, hard. As Dosu soared into the air, Lee appeared behind him, wrapping the mummified genin in his bandages. Then Lee started to spin, slowly at first, but it gradually picked up more and more speed until the pair looked like a drill plummeting to the earth. Oh shit! Zaku shouted as he saw the speeding drill that was Lee and Dosu. There's no way Dosu can survive something like this. The spiky-haired Oto genin began running through a quick series of hand seals, ending on the monkey's seal. Take this. Omote Renj, Hidden Latsu, yelled Lee as he released his hold on Dosu. Just as he was about to hit the ground, Zaku slammed a hands into the ground and sent a wave of air towards the spot Dosu was about to hit. A few seconds later, Dosu hit the ground head first, implanting himself into it with a little over half his body sticking up. With a few wiggles and grunts, Dosu got himself out of the ground and stood back up, no worse for wear. That actually would have killed me had Zaku not softened the ground for my fall, Dosu said as he looked at his now tired-out opponent. I am possible, Lee muttered as he fell to the ground, his muscles having torn from using his jutsu. It seems that attack you used has some serious backlash, Dosu mused as he saw Lee kneeling on the ground, panting. It matters not. I may be tired, but so are you. I can still win, Lee said, giving Dosu a confident smile. Not in that condition you can't, Dosu chuckled, and in case you haven't noticed, I'm not the only one you need to deal with. Now I'm getting rather irritated at your interference, so I'll just finish you off now. Dosu charged forward once again as he reared his arm back for another attack. Lee tried to dodge only to receive a jolt of pain for his troubles as the after effects of the jutsu kicked in. He looked up just as Dosu swung at him. Lee was lucky enough to dodge the attack, albeit barely, but before he could even think of retaliating, his vision began to get blurry and a sharp pain filled his head as his ears bled. Lee tried to stand, but as soon as he moved he was forced onto his hands and knees as he began to throw up. You like? Asked Dosu. I call this my melody arm. With it I can amplify sound waves and use the vibrations they cause to break through your eardrum and damage the inner membrane, making you lose your semblance of balance. You won't be able to function properly for a while now. Deciding he did not want to be left out, Zaku lifted up his hands and pulled his palms up to reveal the hole he had in each hand. My specialty is the ability to control supersonic airwaves and air pressure, slicing up or blasting my opponents. To us, your jutsu are laughable. As you can see, you have no hope against us. You put up a good fight, but it's time to say goodbye, kid. Dosu reared his melody arm back, ready to strike. He didn't get the chance to swing as a powerful punch connected with his jaw, launching him back several feet. Dosu looked up in surprise at seeing a fiercely determined Sakura standing beside Lee, her fist held out in a punch. So it looks like she's not completely useless after all, Zaku commented with a sneer. Sakura panted as she glared at the trio. There was no way she could win against one of them, let alone all three at the same time. I wish Sasuke-kun was awake, Sakura thought to herself. Surely he would save me if he were. Cha! Sasuke-kun would kick their asses! Came the voice of inner Sakura, the alter ego that existed inside the pinkette's head. Unfortunately, Sasuke was unconscious and Lee was beaten. He had protected her while Sasuke was out of it, so the least she could do was help him until Sasuke could wake up and save them. As Sakura-san? Asked a wide-eyed and surprised Lee. Don't worry, Lee. I can at least hold them off for a bit while you recover, Sakura said with a determined expression. Heh, I don't even know if she's worth the effort, Zaku commented. Well then, why don't I take care of this? Kin asked rhetorically. Sakura looked at Kin before dashing towards her. She flung several shuriken before going through a set of hand seals. Kin blocked or dodged all the shuriken and looked at the pinkette only to see 3 of her. You don't honestly think a pathetic jutsu like that is going to work, do you? Snorted Kin as she threw several sanban at Sakura. All 3 Sakuras burst into smoke, with the one in the middle also being replaced with a log. Sensing a presence behind her, Kin turned to see 3 more Sakuras, all of them doing hand seals. Kin gave a grunt of annoyance as she tossed more sanban. Once again, the 2 on either end disappeared in a puff of smoke, while the middle one was replaced with a log. Kin spun around just as Sakura appeared behind her, blocking the punch the pinkette sent her before lashing out with her own fist. Sakura stumbled back, giving Kin the opportunity to knee the girl in the gut before kicking the back of her legs, forcing Sakura onto her knees. Then she grabbed Sakura by the hair, pulling on it as hard as she could, forcing Sakura to yelp in pain. Well, get a feel of this. It seems her hair is softer than mine. Kin's smirk turned into a disgusted sneer. If you have time to take such good care of your hair, you could have spent it better training. You're not even a real kunoichi, are you? Probably just a pathetic fangirl for the Uchiha boy over there. Hey Zaku! Why don't we kill that Sasuke guy in front of this little bitch? Heh, it would be my pleasure, Sasuke said as he made his way over to the shelter. Tears began leaking out of the corner of Sakura's eyes. Everything was going wrong. Sasuke was unconscious and about to be killed, and these people were going to force her to watch. These things weren't supposed to happen. Sasuke was supposed to wake up and save her, and then they would get married and she would have his babies. And now they were both going to die. Despite having nothing to do with her current predicament, she blamed Naruto for not being awake to help her protect Sasuke. A yank on her hair brought her head back up. "Come on, pay attention. My teammate is going to kill your boyfriend. I wouldn't want you to miss it." Sakura's eyes widened. "I can't let them kill Sasuke-kun." Sakura brought her kunai up, causing Kin to take notice. "You don't seriously think you can get me like this, do you?" Kin asked with a superior smirk. "Don't be stupid, you're too weak to get me." "Who said this was for you?" "Wah." Sakura slashed the kunai up behind her, cutting off her hair and surprising Kin. Standing up, the pink-haired girl reared her head back and smashed it into Kin's face, causing the girl to stumble back. Sakura then raced towards Zaku, who had taken notice, and began several hand seals. Zaku sent a blast of airwaves at her, but Sakura replaced herself with a log, reappearing on his left doing more hand seals. "Gah! You're so annoying!" Zaku shouted as he released more airwaves. However, Sakura once again replaced herself with a log, this time appearing above him. "That stupid technique will only work so many times." He flung a kunai at her, and then began searching around for where she would appear next. After a while, when she did not reappear, he blinked, then became surprised when he felt blood splatter onto his face. He looked up to see Sakura with a kunai in her forearm still descending on him. She jabbed her own kunai in his left forearm while biting onto his right hand. The two tumbled to the ground with Sakura on top and keeping Zaku from using his airwave attack. "Gah! You bitch! Get off!" He began to smash a fist onto her head, attempting to get her off of him. "You goddamn crazy bitch! Get off!" Birth of the new Demon King. Ever since the start of these exams, things have been nothing but trouble for the members of Team 10. Their first problem had come from Choji, who, after several days within the forest, had begun to complain about the lack of food. Thus, Ino had been forced to bully Shikamaru into catching some fish. The second problem had come from the task itself, namely, they hadn't been able to get the other scroll they needed. It hadn't helped that the few teams they had run into had been way too strong for them, and the only time they had run into a single ninja just had to be last year's Rookie of the Year. And that was a guy Shikamaru wouldn't face on his best day. Needless to say, the whole thing was very troublesome. If that wasn't enough, and these exams hadn't already gone pear-shaped, the three of them had run into the most troublesome situation to date. Chuji, Ino and Shikamaru had just been minding their own business, trying to find some weaklings they could get a scroll from, when they had stumbled on the scene and watched in horror as one of the people they knew from the academy was getting her face beaten in. "What do you want to do, Ino?" asked Shikamaru, for once his voice not sounding lazy. It was troublesome, but much as he just wanted to watch the clouds or go to sleep, now was not the time. Ino bit her lip as she remained silent. She didn't know what to do. A part of her wanted to help her former friend. She could still remember how she first met Sakura. The pinkette had been getting picked on by Ami, a former classmate of theirs that had failed to graduate. She had helped chase them away, then discovered they had been making fun of Sakura for her large forehead. Ino could still remember the day she had given Sakura the red ribbon she had used to wear back at the academy, claiming that if she made a big deal of her forehead, then others would simply make more fun of her. They had been best friends up to that point, until Sasuke had come along. It had been 6 months into the academy when Sakura had given her back the ribbon she had given the pinkette as a sign of their friendship, claiming that they were rivals from now on for Sasuke's affection. To this day, she and Ino were still enemies. And yet at the same time. "Ino?" Shikamaru said, snapping the blonde from her funk. She looked over at her lazy teammate to see the serious expression on his face. "She's your friend, isn't she? Didn't you two know each other really well in the academy?" Ino looked at Shikamaru, before looking back at Sakura, who was still taking a beating. A determined expression came onto Ino's face as she stood up. "Let's get out of here." Birth of the new Demon King. After bashing Sakura in the face several dozen more times, Zaku finally managed to pry the girl off. The girl had been pretty damn tenacious, hanging on like a pit bull once it got its hands, or teeth as they were, a bone. Zaku had lost count of the number of times he'd pounded his fist into the girl's head, but the last one finally managed to dislodge her. As Sakura was sent sprawling to the ground, he stood up, a scowl on his face as he glared down on her. "Damn bitch," Sasuke growled, anger and hatred permeating his voice. "I'm gonna blow you away, you little cunt." The Oto Genin's hands were quick to come up, the blowholes within his appendages practically humming with chakra. He was just about to blow her to oblivion when Team 10 appeared, Shikamaru on the left, Ino in the middle, and Choji sitting on his hand on the right. It became clear that only Shikamaru and Ino had come willingly, because Shikamaru was holding on to Choji's scarf, having obviously dragged the larger boy with him. "What the hell is this?" "The second line of defense," Sasuke snorted. "No matter how many of you losers turn up, the outcome is going to be the same." He was beginning to get particularly annoyed by all of the interruptions they'd been having. This mission was supposed to have been simple: find Sasuke and kill him. He was already unconscious and the girls shouldn't have taken much to put down. Minimal fuss, minimal risk. Now they not only just finished a fight with some taijutsu freak that looked like he'd glued caterpillars to his eyebrows, but the pink-haired little bitch had proven to be more trouble than she was worth. And now they had to deal with this interruption. It was fraying the end of Sasuke's relatively short fuse. "Aino?" Sakura voiced her confusion. "Why are you here?" "TCH," Ino huffed, not bothering to look at the girl as a small smirk formed on her face. "Didn't I tell you before, I'm not going to let you show me up, forehead. There's no way I'm going to let you show off for Sasuke-kun and leave me behind. They just keep swarming in, they're like bugs." Dosa mumbled, his single visible eye narrowing into a glare as he looked at the three new ninja now standing in the way of their mission. These foolish Konoha ninja will be sorry they ever decided to butt into business that doesn't concern them. "What the hell are you two thinking?" Chuji hissed. "These guys are too dangerous." Chuji knew that out of all the teams theirs was likely the weakest. While Shikamaru had never outright said it, he knew enough about his lazy friend to read between the lines. All one had to do was look at the facts. They had the laziest jonin in Konoha, who preferred playing shogi to teaching. Shikamaru never trained, preferring to either watch the clouds or play shogi with Asuma. He himself was always eating while watching the clouds or watching Shikamaru play shogi. And Ino either only complained, fawned over Sasuke, or talked about how she would beat Sakura, which often involved Sasuke. It was made worse because each of them only knew one of their clan techniques. Shikamaru was too lazy to learn anymore. Ino was too busy being a fangirl. And Chuji was always too busy eating to learn. The facts were they had nothing over this team, if what they had seen so far was any indication. He was snapped out of his thoughts when Shikamaru spoke up. "It's troublesome, but we have to do this. Now that Ino's shown herself, we men can't just run away." "Sorry I got you two involved," Ino apologized. "But we are a three-man team, we do everything together." "Nah, whatever happens, happens," Shikamaru shrugged, "we'll find a way to deal with this." But I don't want to die yet," whined Chuji as he turned around and attempted to make a run for it. However, Shikamaru had latched onto Chuji's scarf to keep him from leaving. "Come on, Shikamaru! Let go of my scarf." You can leave if you want, fatty," Sasuke said, grinning darkly. Chuji stopped moving completely. All thoughts of leaving disappeared when Sasuke said those words. "What did he just say?" I couldn't hear him too well. "I said you can go back into the forest and fuck yourself. Fat ass!" Sasuke exclaimed. "Oh no, he's done it," Shikamaru muttered a quick curse of troublesome under his breath. That word is taboo for Chuji. Chuji did complete 180 turnaround as steam began to pour out of his ears. "I'm not fat, you stupid piece of shit. I'm big-boned. And now I'm gonna squash you." "Alright. Now we're talking," Ino cheered, while Shikamaru muttered a quick troublesome. "Take it away, Choji." "With pleasure." Chuji put his hand into a ram's seal. Baika no Jutsu, double weight jutsu. Right before the eyes of everyone present, Choji's body quickly expanded to nearly 3 times his size. Too many, he looked like a giant balloon. His limbs and head were pulled into his clothing, with chakra coming out of the holes, turning him into a giant ball. "Nikuden Shinsha, human boulder, Pudgy's rule!" He cried out, somehow still perfectly clear despite being inside his clothes, before he began rolling towards Sasuke faster than the Oto Genin expected. "What the hell is this?" Sasuke held out his hands and sneered. It's just a rolling ball of fat ass. Zankuhua, slicing airwaves. A blast of powerful airwaves was sent towards the rolling ball that was Chuji. As the attack hit, the airwaves proceeded to slow the large ball down, but did not stop the technique in its entirety. Instead, the two attacks seemed to be in a stalemate, with the airwaves trying to stop the green ball from running Zaku over, and Choji continuing to try and press onwards, unaffected by the airwaves. Neither force seemed willing to back down, and it looked like the fight would become a battle of attrition. That all changed when Choji ascended into the air, moving out of the slipstream the airwaves created. What the dash? My airwaves were useless! Zaku shouted, his voice surprised and his eyes widening. It wasn't every day someone saw a ball of fat move like that. And I can't touch that thing or it will rip my arms off, then I'll be crushed. Seeing the predicament his teammate was in, Dosu began to run towards Zaku. Before he could get even 5 feet he found himself frozen. Out of the corner of his eyes he noticed his shadow was attached to Shikamaru, who was holding up a hand seal. Kage main no jutsu, shadow possession jutsu, success. The shadow using Genin muttered, a bored yet victorious look on his face. My body, I can't move. Dosu found that even talking was requiring some effort. This must be some kind of paralysis jutsu. Chuji slammed into the ground, forcing Zaku to jump away lest he be crushed. While the Oto ninja may have gotten away clean, the landscape around where Choji slammed into the earth formed into a large crater that was several inches larger than the Akamichi himself. Shikamaru put his hands on his head with the fingertips touching his head, forming an M and forcing Dosu to do the same. Dosu! What are you doing? Kin shouted as she saw Dosu moving into weird poses. Ino! Now it's just the girl we need to take care of. Shikamaru shouted as he used his hands to make a pair of ears on his head, forcing Dosu to do the same. Got it, Shikamaru! Ino made a triangle hand seal, aiming it at the only female Oto ninja. Take care of my body! Ninpu, Shintenshin no Jutsu, ninja art, body possession jutsu. Before Kin could do anything, the jutsu hit, and the dark-haired girl's eyes seemed to glaze over. Ino's body swayed a bit before Shikamaru caught her, while Dosu made the same pose but caught no one. It's over now! The now-possessed Kin shouted as she pulled out a kunai. If you guys move an inch, I'll slit this girl's throat. When I can't sense your chakra anymore, I'll let her go. If you don't want it to end here, I suggest you leave your scroll and get out of here. Both Dosu and Zaku just looked at her, confusing the Konoha ninja. However, when a smirk formed on Zaku's face, Ino began to get a terrible feeling in the pit of her stomach. Choji! She shouted, just as Zaku held up a hand towards her and sent a powerful airwave at the girl. Choji managed to get there in time, but due to the position of his body and the fact that he was spinning perpendicular to the attack, he was unable to fully block off the effects of the jutsu. In the end, while the attack may not have hit his teammate, Choji ended up smacking into Ino, sending her flying while he smashed against the ground several feet away, too dizzy to be of much use. The possessed girl hit the tree behind her, making her yelp in pain and cough up blood. Because of the effects of the jutsu, blood also started coming out of Ino's mouth. Ino! Shikamaru yelled in worry. These Gisti don't even care if they hurt their comrade, Ino said from Kin's body as she lay on the ground. Heh, I think you guys are confused about us, Zaku said darkly. Our goals are not the stupid scrolls nor to safely complete this exam, Dosu said, his eyes holding a dark quality that made him look slightly insane. We're simply here to kill Sasuke. The genin who had not known that felt their eyes widen in surprise. None of them could understand what was going on. Why were these people after Sasuke? As far as they knew, Sasuke had never done anything to warrant assassins coming after him. So why were these people so adamant on killing him? Damn it! This jutsu's gonna end soon. Shikamaru grit his teeth in frustration at the troublesome situation he found himself in. It looks like that girl's jutsu allows her spirit to enter the body of another. Dosu smirked under his bandages. However, if her bleeding is any indication, she receives any damage done to the body she enters. That means that killing Kin will also kill that girl. Oh man, this is bad. Shikamaru was sweating up a storm as he realized how terrible of a position they were in. Not only were these Oto ninjas stronger than they were, but they had now lost the element of surprise. The mummy-looking genin had already figured out his and Ino's jutsu, and Choji's jutsu were straightforward taijutsu attacks. No need for analysis there. And now they were in a bind. His jutsu had worn off, Choji was down and too dizzy to actually do anything, and Ino had already used her only jutsu and it hadn't worked out as planned. Shikamaru knew he would need to come up with something to get them out of this, and fast. "Would you really kill your teammate?" he asked, trying to stall for time. "Anything, even a second or two would be good. The longer they lived, the better their chances of survival were." "PSH, you seem to think we actually care about the girl," Zaku said, looking at the Konoha genin with a grin. "The only reason she's even on the team is because her skills complement ours. But if she can't even keep from getting caught in a worthless jutsu like that, then she's just useless baggage. Bah, I can't take this anymore." Everyone looked up to see Niji and Tenten on a branch several meters above them. Niji scowled as he crossed his arms, some small-time ninja from a second-rate village like Oto fighting a bunch of kids. "You call that a victory?" he scoffed. "How pathetic." "They keep coming out like cockroaches," Dosa mumbled. Lee Tenten muttered as she saw her teammate. Niji looked at her before looked back at the battle, more specifically 3 Oto genin. He channeled some chakra into his eyes, causing veins to bulge around the sides of his head, and if one looked closely enough, inside of his eyes as well. The glare he sent the Oto ninja, enhanced by the bulging veins of his Byakugan, caused Dosu and Zaku to freeze in their tracks. "The kid with the bowl cut is our teammate. It looks like you went a little overboard with him." "So what if we did? What are you going to do about it?" Zaku gave the Hyuga a defiant glare. Niji opened his mouth for a moment before he smirked and deactivated his Byakugan. "I don't have to do anything." Everyone wondered what he meant with that statement, but it soon became clear when a vile and evil chakra descended onto the clearing. Everyone turned to see Sasuke, still on the ground, but with a violent purple chakra leaking out of his body like wisps of smoke. It wasn't long before the chakra covered his entire body, encasing him in an ugly purple barrier. Said barrier soon exploded, purple chakra lashing out in all directions. Sasuke was standing, his legs spread out, the upper half of his body slouched down in a slightly feral position. The right side of his body began to glow with odd orange markings that spread across his face, arms and legs like a parasite, strange symbols that looked every bit as evil as the chakra he was unleashing felt. Sasuke-kun, Sakura mumbled in shock, awe and more than a little lust as she saw all of the power he was emitting. "This," Sasuke Uchiha said in awe, his eyes looking at the arm that was covered in all of the Fuinjutsu markings. "This power, this is just what I need to kill Itachi." As if just noticing for the first time that he was not alone, Sasuke's head raised and his eyes sought out all of the people around him. Everyone his gaze landed on tensed, minus Zaku, who either didn't feel the power he was emitting, or simply didn't care. A sick grin spread across Sasuke's face. "How come I wasn't invited to this little party?" Birth of the new Demon King. Naruto was breathing heavily as he continued defending himself from Raisin's ruthless attacks. The man was absolutely insane. It was taking all he had not to get himself killed, relying more on dodging than blocking as the man's hits hurt like hell. He had no clue how long this battle had been going on for, but he was beginning to tire. "Come on!" Raisin's yell resounded through the sewer as the Demon King continued kicking his blonde descendant's ass. He sent several quick, straight jabs right to Naruto's face, who managed to dodge one by tilting his head as he backpedaled, and blocked the other with his left forearm. The wince Naruto made when he blocked the attack, however, let everyone know that it still did damage, even if it didn't hit its intended destination. "Don't just dodge me. Attack. Stop being so goddamn pathetic." Naruto grit his teeth as he tried to attack, moving forward, fist cocked back for a corkscrewing punch, only to get a fist smashed into his face. Naruto staggered back, and was not even given the chance to clear his head as Raisin kicked him in the gut. Naruto bent over Raisin's foot as he coughed up blood, folding like a chair when the man's foot left his stomach. "This is pathetic," Raisin sneered at the blonde. "To think I have such a weak air." Naruto snarled as he leapt up. No one called him weak. He would show this man not to mess with him. Beginning his assault again, the blonde launched a flurry of strikes that were all dodged by Raisin. However, if one were to look at the attacks as they came, then they would have noticed how each punch seemed to become faster and faster. It wasn't long before Naruto's fists were a literal blur of motion, barely visible to the human eye. Fortunately for Raisin, he was no human. The fists, while fast, were still moving in slow motion to him. He dodged each and every attack accordingly, not even needing to use his hands to block the blows as he merely tilted his head and twisted his body. Not bad, but it's still not good enough. A loud growl emanated from Naruto's throat, and once more the blonde seemed to push himself to new heights. His attacks became even faster, his movements sure, his strength went through the roof. While none of the attacks had hit Raisin, he could feel the power rolling off the fists that came his way, each attack with enough force that his long and jagged-looking hair was blown back. Raisin smirked as a light red haze began to cover Naruto's body as the blonde's assault continued. His speed began to increase even more. His fists started moving so fast that Raisin was actually forced to block rather than dodge. As more and more power began emanating from the blonde, his speed and strength reached an unprecedented level. "Excellent," Raisin said with a grin as he felt the strength of Naruto's hits, no longer able to dodge and thus relegated to blocking. They were not as powerful as his own, but the boy was still young and had not yet come fully into his demonic heritage. Given time and the proper training, Naruto could easily be just as strong, if not stronger than he was. Naruto did not reply as the red layer of energy turned black and covered his body even more, making it so that neither Raisin or Kyubi could see any more than his outline. The red energy soon began to change shape, making the figure taller, more muscular. The spiky hair on the back began to grow and his face became more angular as all of the baby fat was burned off. Finally Raisin received a heavy hit in the face, sending him flying back. Raisin grinned as he landed on his feet and looked at the new Naruto that appeared before them when the red energy melted away. "I am pleased to see that you may be worthy of being my descendant after all. Unfortunately, my time with you is now done," Raisin said. "What do you mean?" Naruto asked. He was breathing heavily, as if he had just run a marathon. Or had a fight with a demon king. However, he was still ready for more. "I hardly know anything about these powers, and you expect me to master them on my own?" "Not on your own," Raisin shook his head. "Kyubi will be here to help you, just bind her to you, it should not be too difficult." Naruto felt an odd shiver at the man's grin. He never noticed Kyubi blush at the words. "I have left her with instructions on how to help your powers grow. So farewell for now, young Naruto." Raisin began to fade out of existence, but had one more parting comment for the blonde before disappearing entirely. "Oh, and be sure to hide those eyes of yours. After all, you would not want an enemy to find out about them until you know what they can do." Naruto watched as Raisin faded away before he looked over at the girl, who had not moved from her position since his and Raisin's battle started. Naruto walked over to the young woman who stiffened upon his approach. "Come here," Naruto said, his newly awakened demonic blood making his tone more commanding. Kyubi did as told, moving until she was in front of the cage, though her eyes were still on the ground. Naruto reached out, placing a hand under Kyubi's chin and lifting her face so he could make eye contact. After several minutes of watching Kyubi fidget under his gaze, Naruto asked the question he had been wanting to know since he had spoken with Raisin. "Raisin Ajisen said that you were not yourself when you attacked the village. What did he mean?" "I was manipulated by a man who had placed me in a genjutsu," Kyubi started hesitantly. She clearly didn't want to talk about it, but this was her new lord and thus, she couldn't ignore such a clear-cut order. "It was designed to torture me over and over again until I had become nothing more than a raging beast that he could bind to his will." "You don't seem like the type to fall for a simple illusion," Naruto commented with a frown. "I had been told Kitsune were masters of illusions." "We are. The reason I fell to this man's abilities was because I—" "Yes?" Naruto asked when Kyubi stopped talking. Kyubi sighed as she realized it would be best to get this out of the way with. "The reason I was susceptible to that man's illusions was because of how I was attacked. The first time he brought me under his control, he had summoned me to this plane by surprise and I had no time to actually resist him. The second time he managed to control me was because at the time I had been trying to escape from your mother." My what?" asked Naruto in a whisper, as if he had not been sure he heard the fox woman correctly. "Your mother, Naruto-sama," Kyubi said, looking away, clearly uncomfortable. "It's obvious you don't know, but you are not my first Jinchuriki. I have had two before you. The first was Uzumaki Mito, the wife of the Shodame Hokage who sealed me within herself during the first time I had been controlled. My second host was Uzumaki Kushina, your mother." I see. Naruto closed his eyes as he processed that information. It was hard to believe, but her words made sense. From what he had heard, the Kyuubi appeared out of nowhere, and without warning as it began attacking the unprepared village of Konoha. Most of the academy students had just accepted the knowledge without question, but Naruto had always questioned how the Kyuubi had managed to kill so many of the village's civilians. One would have thought that if the Kyuubi had been coming to Konoha, the village would have prepared, or even abandoned the village to rebuild at a later time. Which meant Kyuubi had appeared without warning, and done so close enough to Konoha that she was able to attack immediately after appearing. He wasn't quite sure what to think about this new information. He wasn't even sure he wanted to think about it. Deciding it would be better to know more, he asked, "So what happened?" "Because of the rarity of Jinchuriki, this isn't common knowledge," Kyuubi began. "But there is a point when a female Jinchuriki seal weakens to the point where a bijou can escape, when she is in childbirth." Naruto's eyes snapped open at those words and Kyuubi flinched under his cold gaze. Despite the slight fear she gained from his new power that was far beyond her, she continued. "I hadn't realized that at the time. All I knew was that the seal was weakening and I wanted out. I tried to break out of the seal, but someone, your father I think, was keeping the seal from breaking. However, sometime during my struggle, the resistance on the seal stopped. The next thing I knew was coming out of the seal. I had thought I was free, but then I ran into that man, the man who used me, manipulated me and turned me into his plaything." "Who was this man?" asked Naruto. "His name is Uchiha Madara." The blonde's eyes widened and Kyuubi continued. "He is the founder of the Uchiha clan." Naruto frowned. With his new senses he could tell she wasn't lying. But wouldn't Madara be like 100-something years old? How could he possibly be alive? Even he had known of the man who helped found Konoha. He had been the second choice for Hokage when the village was founded. When he betrayed the village Hashirama, the Shodaime Hokage had fought and killed him. Or so the story went. "I don't know," Kyuubi shrugged. "I don't know much about him, only that he used me twice." With everything he had learned, Naruto decided to withhold his judgment over Kyuubi until he could process it all. "I'll be leaving for now," he said at last. Looking at Kyuubi, his eyes narrowed slightly. "We will be having words when I get back. And you will explain everything you know to me." "Hi, Naruto-sama," Kyuubi stuttered when Naruto released some of his power of back up his words. Naruto nodded before disappearing from the seal. This changes everything." Dosu's mind was in shambles as he stared at the raven-haired boy with the markings of Orochimaru's curse seal spreading across his body. "His chakra is incredible. There's no way we can compete with this kind of power." "Ha! You're finally awake," Sasuke said as he stepped towards Sasuke, a smirk on his features. "Now I can finally kill you." Dosu was the only one who knew what that seal was, having seen it on 4 others who were Orochimaru's elite guards. He knew that his teammate didn't stand a chance against Sasuke as he was now, and tried to stop his fellow Oto ninja from attacking the Uchiha. "Zaku, don't!" However, it was too late as Zaku held out his palms and shouted, "Zenku Hayakaha," extreme decapitating air waves. The blast of slicing airwaves that emitted from Zaku's hands were incredible. Everyone was forced to crouch down and cover their eyes as the immense pressure displaced the air around them, causing many of those in attendance to be nearly blown off their feet. When the jutsu finally ended, the many groups that had converged saw that the land in front of Zaku had been turned into a large trench several feet wide and nearly a foot deep. It stretched out for all the way to the tree that Sasuke and Naruto had been lying under, which looked like a giant had taken a bite out of it. Naruto had been buried under the rubble, thus, no one saw his body as it was encased in a red haze. "Ha ha!" Zaku was breathing heavily as he stood there, his feet spread shoulder-width apart, slightly crouched, with his hands held out in front of him. However, despite his obvious state of exhaustion, he had a proud smirk on his face. "Hell, look at that," he said with a huff, his tone somehow managing to retain its arrogance despite his exhausted state. "Blew that little shit to pieces." "Not quite." Zaku's eyes widened as he heard the voice behind him. He tried to turn around, but wasn't given the chance to do much of anything as he was pounded in the back of the head by a fist. Hard. With a shout of pain and surprise, Zaku was sent flying. He soared through the air, right until his body hit the ground with a loud smack that rang across the clearing. His still conscious teammate yelled his name, but it was lost to the boy as he rolled across the ground like a ragdoll. His brutal tumble ended eventually, and Zaku managed to just push himself up onto his hands and knees. As he did so, his wide eyes strayed over to Sasuke, who was standing in the same spot he had hit Zaku from, Sakura standing just a few feet behind him. Such speed! Dosu cried out in surprise. He managed to get his teammate out of harm's way in the blink of an eye. Everyone else seemed just as surprised as Dosu was. Well, Zaku was still quivering in shock and more than a little fear, but the members of Teams 10 and 9 were staring at Sasuke in shock. Even Niji had a surprised look in his eyes. Sasuke smirked. It was the kind of look a cat had when playing with a mouse. His hands came up and soon ran through a quick gauntlet of seals, ending on the Tiger Seal, the seal for all fire jutsu. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, Fire Release, Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. Sasuke sucked in a deep breath, then released it in quick bursts. Several flames erupted from his mouth and took the shape of fireballs. The volley of fiery destruction sped towards Zaku, who had finally managed to get back to his feet and regained his bravado, even if most of it was faked. I'm not gonna let you get the best of me. The Oto Genin stuck his hands out and released a powerful burst of airwaves that smacked against the fireballs, putting the flames out. Only to find that Sasuke had hidden shuriken inside of the flames. Zaku had no time to do anything other than get his arms up to cover his face as the shuriken came at him. He screamed in pain as they struck, slicing up his arms and legs. A few managed to embed themselves in his body, causing further damage. Zaku! Dosu shouted. Get down! Huh! Before Zaku could do much of anything, Sasuke was already there, sliding across the ground as if he were on ice. The last Uchiha was quick to move behind Zaku, grabbing both of the older boy's wrists, then raising his left leg. Gah! His foot stomped on Zaku's back, forcing the boy onto his knees, his arms held in a painful position behind his back. His eyes widened further, and more pain erupted from his arms as Sasuke pulled on them. While the Oto ninja could not see it, everyone else noticed a sick and twisted grin on Sasuke's face. Clearly, he was enjoying himself. You seem to be very proud of these arms of yours, Sasuke said, grinning as he toyed with the boy. He couldn't see it, but just knowing that Sasuke's eyes were wide and a mixture of shock, pain, and fear caused a shiver of pleasure to go down Sasuke's spine. You must be very attached to them. Zaku just barely managed to turn his head when he felt the foot on his back begin putting more pressure on him. His eyes widened in horror. He screamed, "What are you doing? No! Stop! Crack! The sound of Zaku's arms breaking like a couple of twigs rang throughout the forest. Everyone there watched in horror as the Oto ninja's arms were bent in a way that defied human anatomy. The arms were now mangled and twisted in such a way that it would be a miracle to get them fixed without a medical ninja, or some very painful manual repositioning. Zaku, his senses overloaded with pain and his mind unable to fully comprehend what was happening, ended up passing out. His eyes rolled into the back of his head, and as Sasuke let go of his arms, he fell down to the ground with a dull thud. With the one arrogant enough to actually challenge him now beaten, Sasuke looked up at the others in the clearing. Everyone cringed at the insane gleam in his eyes, everyone except Sakura, who had hearts in her eyes as she thought of how cool her Sasuke-kun was. Even Ino, who had been just as rabid a fangirl as Sakura, couldn't help but flinch at the bloodlust and evil intent radiating off of raven-haired genin. However, Sasuke ignored them. They were just pests to be dealt with at a later time as far as he was concerned. Now who's next? Sasuke said as he advanced on Dosu, who began backing away in fright. The Uchiha noticed this and grinned. Scared? That's too bad. I was hoping you would provide more entertainment than that other one, but it looks like I'm not going to get even that. However, before Sasuke could get to Dosu, another powerful chakra came crashing down on the clearing, this one so potent that everyone, even Sasuke, was forced to their knees as they struggled to breathe. No one could pinpoint the source of this power, mainly because no one could actually lift their heads to look. Only Negi would have been capable of seeing where the source was coming from due to his Byakugan, and he had been forced to turn it off, lest the chakra saturating the area blind him. Underneath the rubble from the tree where Naruto had lain, the red cocoon that had surrounded him exploded. The debris from the tree flew everywhere as a bright red light flashed across the clearing. Everyone was forced to close their eyes as a red light came over them. When it was over, they turned their attention to the tree where the light had come from, and were shocked to see a person standing there. He stood at about a height of about 167 centimeters, making him a little over a head taller than Sasuke. He was not wearing a shirt, allowing everyone to see the rock-hard and compact muscles that ran along his chest, abs and arms. Streamlined, that was the closest word any of the people there could think of for his body type. He wasn't big, nor did his muscles bulge like what people would see from a bodybuilder or a pro wrestler. However, he was ripped, his muscles were defined and cut in a way that made them look as if they had been chiseled from stone. Even the most minuscule of movements caused them to twitch and flex. His pants, which were straining against the man's muscles, were a bright and obnoxious orange that very few people would be caught dead wearing. They were also familiar, though no one there seemed capable of making the connection as they were still trying to make their brains work again. He had on blue shinobi sandals and a Konoha headband wrapped around his head, keeping his waist-long mane of spiky golden blonde hair out of his face, allowing them to see a pair of deep blue eyes. His face was lean, masculine, with a well-defined jawline. The only oddity to his features, which really did nothing to detract from his image, were the small pair of fawn-like canines jutting from his upper lip. Had the situation not been so serious, both Ino, and quite possibly even Tenten, would have likely creamed themselves from just looking at the man's face and body. He had the kind of looks that seemed almost divine, like someone had seen God and decided to chisel out his features in stone. Any woman that saw him would claim the man embodied perfection. The blond man walked out of the large hole he had made in the tree and looked around, eyeing each of the people there. "I wonder what the hell is going on here?" the man questioned in a deep voice, though it was clear the man was talking to himself. He did not seem particularly concerned about the situation he was in. If anything, he seemed amused. Sasuke looked at the man who was radiating power like beacon with jealousy. This man's power was even stronger than the one he was using. That power should be his. "Who the hell are you?" Sasuke demanded to know, his Sharingan eyes glaring at the man. Combined with the curse mark, it made for an intimidating sight. The before him did not seem fazed in the slightest. Instead of cowering like most would have, he smirked. "I'm surprised you don't recognize me, team. It hurts to know that my own teammate can't even figure out who I am." Sasuke narrowed his eyes as he registered what the man said. "Dope." Everyone looked over at the blonde in shock when they heard Sasuke's words. There was no way this ripped and extremely powerful-looking man could be the dead last of their class. Could there? Naruto laughed and gave Sasuke a mocking clap. "So I see you really do have a brain in that head of yours." Sasuke growled, "I'm gonna have to show you why you shouldn't insult your betters, loser." "My betters, huh?" Naruto said with a grin as he watched Sasuke get closer. To him, the boy was moving in slow motion. The blonde watched and waited, not even bothering to react until Sasuke was right next to him and preparing to send a punch his way. The young Uchiha didn't even know what hit him as Naruto's fist collided with his chest, the power behind the punch making it feel like his entire ribcage had caved in before he was sent flying. Everyone watched in absolute shock as Sasuke was sent sailing right into a tree, hitting the trunk hard enough to cause it to crack. Sasuke slid down the tree as his cursio receded. He was unconscious before he even hit the ground. Naruto ignored the shocked looks on everyone's face as he walked over to Dosu. "Hand over the scroll now, or I'll finish what that little bitch of an Uchiha started," Naruto commanded. Dosu gulped as he grabbed his scroll. He knew better than to mess with someone who could defeat Sasuke with his curse seal so easily. "Here, will you let us go?" Dosu asked as he tossed Naruto his scroll. Naruto caught the scroll and looked at it. Nodding with a satisfied look, he pocketed the scroll and gave Dosu a dismissive wave. "Yeah, you can leave." Dosu held in a sigh of relief as he picked up Zaku and Kin, throwing one over his shoulder and the other in an underarm carry. Naruto waited until Dosu was out of sight, before turning around to face the Konoha genin. "Yo," he said with a wave. Everyone looked at him, still stunned. "Naruto?" Shikamaru asked, his tone unsure. While he felt this was the best guess he had, mainly because of the kill me orange pants the man was wearing, it was still hard to believe that this man was the obnoxious loudmouth they had known at the academy. Shikamaru couldn't help but wonder what happened to the blonde. They had all seen him lying under the tree with Sasuke, and he had most definitely not looked like he did now. Which meant that something must have happened between those few seconds during the recent battle between Sasuke and the Oto ninja. But what? Shikamaru wondered. Unfortunately, even he couldn't come up with any explanation as to Naruto's extraordinary transformation. Naruto rolled his eyes. Who else would I be? The fucking Tooth Fairy? Those words seemed to snap everyone out of their stupor, though many were still left wondering how this person, who was radiating power like a furnace, could possibly be Naruto. Sakura, however, did not care as she remembered what Naruto did to her Sasuke-kun. Her eyes quickly became enraged as she stood up. She began to march over to Naruto, her march quickly turning into a run as she shouted, "Naruto and Obaka, look what you did to Sasuke-kun." With her fist cocked back and ready to let loose all of her righteous anger on the blonde like she usually did, Naruto grit his teeth at the loud and ear-piercing screech the pink-haired banshee unleashed. Looking over at the girl, the blonde frowned as he saw her rush him with a fist cocked back to deliver her righteous fury. Not that he had any intention of letting her hit him anymore. He sidestepped her rather clumsy attack, chopping the back of her neck as she passed him to knock her out. As she fell face first to the ground, Naruto sighed and created 2 clones, one to carry Sakura and one to carry Sasuke. He looked over at teams 9 and 10. "I suggest you guys get moving to the tower." With nothing left to say, the blonde leapt into the trees and disappeared. "Was that really Naruto?" asked Ino. Now that the danger had passed, she felt herself shiver and slump to the ground. Her face became flushed as her mind remembered just how attractive the blonde had become. That is, if that was really Naruto. When did he get so hot? "It looks like it," Shikamaru muttered, a disgruntled look on his face. It was clear he was not pleased with this new development. He also had no trouble expressing this through more complaining. "This is just great, now that blonde is going to be even more troublesome. Come on, we'd better head to the tower so we can get out of this troublesome forest." Birth of the new Demon King. Naruto grinned as he and his clones hopped through the trees at a speed that would put most ninja to shame. He felt great. Ever since he had woken up, Naruto felt like his body had been hooked up to a power coupling. His chakra, which had already been quite large, was now through the roof. The second chakra system, which he recognized as his Yukai, was a barely contained maelstrom of power, giving his namesake justice. He could feel it coursing through his body, rolling off him and giving him more energy than 1,000 ninja. He felt powerful, invincible. Absently, he twirled the new heaven scroll he had gotten from a group of unsuspecting AIM ninja that he had jumped around his fingers. It was amusing to see how pathetic some of the people entering this exam were. The 3 AIM ninja had been so busy trying to lay a trap for the clones he had sent after sensing them, that they had not even realized the real danger until he appeared within their midst. Now they were dead and he had their scroll. The blonde Uzumaki wasn't sure how long he had been in this forest, having been unconscious for some time during what he had decided to call his rebirth, since he felt it fit the description of his new changes. Currently, he and his clones were making their way towards the tower in the middle of the forest of death. He wanted to get there within the next hour. Ugh. Naruto looked over to see Sakura starting to wake up. Her body was stirring and her eyelids were beginning to flutter. A frown marred the blonde's face. He didn't want to have to deal with the girl shrieking right now. Thankfully, his clone noticed too and made sure her head hit on a tree branch so he would not have to listen to the pink-haired girl's screaming. The blonde took a moment to wonder just what the hell his old self had been thinking when he thought he was in love with that girl. She was nothing more than an overly loud and abusive fangirl, one who used every opportunity she had to degrade and hit him. His thoughts on his former stupidity in liking a banshee like Sakura didn't last long, however, since he had far more important things to think about. Several minutes later, Naruto found himself standing in front of one of the doors leading into the tower. After kicking the door open, Naruto walked in and looked around. The room was fairly large, with several red columns on either side acting as supports. The walls were a barren gray, with cracks and stains that showed just how old this tower really was. The tiles were white, and while the walls were in rough shape, the tiles looked almost brand new. Strange. Soon enough, the blonde's eyes landed on a large poster hanging on the wall opposite the door. Naruto's keen eyes were quick to pick up what it said. Realizing it was a riddle and what it meant, Naruto created a clone and handed it the heaven scroll. The clone looked at Naruto, and seeing him nod, they both opened their scrolls at the same time. On the inside of both scrolls were a mass of lines and squiggles. They varied in size, shape, and length, all of them written around a circle that seemed to be the base. It took a moment for the blonde to recognize the symbols as seals, but when he did his eyes widened as he realized what they likely meant. With a shout to his clone, both he and his doppelganger were quick to toss the scrolls away. The two scrolls hit the ground, forming an X as the heaven scroll landed on top of the earth scroll. There was a burst of smoke, and when it cleared, Iruka was standing in front of Naruto. Iruka was a man of average height and build. He had brown hair that was being kept in a ponytail, dark eyes and a scar that ran across the bridge of his nose, which he has had since his youth. He was wearing the standard Konoha shinobi outfit complete with forehead protector, sandals and flak jacket. The only difference between his outfit and most others was that he had the sleeves rolled about a fourth of the way up his arms. Iruka-sensei, Naruto said with a small smile on his face as he saw one of his only precious people. Iruka was the first person to believe in him besides the Hokage, and one of the only people that Naruto considered family. Hello Naruto. Iruka trailed off as he got a look at the new Naruto. His eyes widened in shock, and for a second, it seemed he had been struck speechless. The scarred man managed to recover admirably, however, and was quick to ask, "What happened to you? You look different?" Naruto finished for Iruka with a shrug and a grin. "Let's just say my bloodline awakened and leave it at that." "Bloodline?" Iruka asked in undisguised curiosity. "I didn't even know you had a bloodline." "Yeah, either did I," Naruto said sardonically. At seeing Iruka's curious look, he added, "I'll tell you about it later, sensei. Right now, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it." Iruka nodded. He was about to speak some more when he noticed Sasuke and Sakura knocked out on the floor a little ways away. His gaze turned curious as he looked back at Naruto. What happened to them? Naruto turned to look at his two teammates, then looked back at Iruka and shrugged. "Sakura got knocked out during our fight with some Oto ninja, and Sasuke got knocked out when this weird lady who can summon snakes gave him a hickey." Both were the truth in a way. Sasuke had been knocked out after receiving that mark. Naruto had just had to knock him out again so he would not try to do something stupid. And Sakura had been knocked out when Naruto fought those Oto ninja. She just hadn't been knocked out by the Oto ninja. However, small details like that really didn't matter. Iruka paled as he heard the part about them fighting someone who could summon snakes. Only 2 people had that ability, and one of them was an S-rank traitor. If he was in Konoha, then it could only mean trouble. "Anyway, you might want to get Sakura to the hospital, and Sasuke should see someone about that seal on his neck," Naruto said. Iruka nodded as he regained his composure. "Of course, I'll get the medical ninja here. In the meantime, why don't you head over to room 232 and get some rest? You have 2 days until the second part of the exams end." Naruto nodded. "Right." At that very moment, Naruto's stomach made itself known with a loud gurgle. Naruto gained a sheepish expression on his face as he rubbed the back of his neck. Iruka-sensei, do you know if there is a cafeteria here?" He had not really had anything good to eat in a while, and his demonic transformation took up a lot of energy. Iruka shook his head at Naruto's antics. However, he couldn't quite keep the smirk off his face. It was good to see that, awakened bloodline or no, Naruto hadn't really changed much. "Yeah, it's down the hall, 3 doors on your left." "Thanks," Naruto said as he ran into the hall to get something to eat. Who knew that having your entire body structure changed in order to hold enough power to equal the greatest demon to ever exist would cause such an appetite? Birth of the new Demon King. A now full Naruto stepped out of the shower and began drying off. The first thing he had done upon finishing his conversation with Iruka was head over to the cafeteria and scarf down as much food as humanly. Or is that demonically possible? He was glad no one else had been there at the time, with most teams still outside in the forest of death, and the few teams that had made it likely resting. Naruto didn't want any of the other squads to know about his transformation yet. Naruto walked over to the mirror near the sink, wiping away the steam on it so he could see his face. Or more specifically his eyes. Both the iris and sclera were a deep blue. Moving outwards from the center were concentric silver rings that spread out in a ripple pattern. Kyuubi had told him this was the Rinnegan, the most legendary of the 3 great Dijutsu, and was rumored to be the progenitor for all Dijutsu. Whether that was true or not, Naruto didn't know, but he did know the man who had created ninjutsu had these eyes. Though his were apparently different than the one that the Rikudo Sennin had. According to Kyuubi, the Rinnegan was supposed to be gray with purple rings. She had told him that the differences in color was likely due to his demonic heritage mixing with the Dijutsu, which also likely meant he would have some different powers than the original Renegade. He shook his head of these thoughts, not really interested in how he got it. Though he did make a note to himself to test his eyes' abilities when the second stage ended. Walking out of the bathroom, Naruto entered the bedroom where he grabbed his boxers and pants and put them on. The room only had a single bed, due to it being a one-person bedroom. He had decided that he didn't want to sleep with his two teammates when they got out of wherever they were, and thus had found his own room. The last thing he needed was for the Banshee to start yelling at him, or the Uchiha to annoy him enough that he would kill the brat in a fit of rage and lose his chance of becoming a Chunin. Sitting down, Naruto took up a meditative position and began focusing some of Kyuubi's chakra to his eyes. Naruto used a minor kitsune illusion to make them appear their standard blue color. Only other kitsune would be able to see through the illusion, and those with the Mangekyo Sharingan would be able to tell there was an illusion over his eyes. Or so Kyuubi had told him when she taught him the jutsu. Naruto created a shadow clone, and as soon as it appeared it took out a brush and ink and began to write seals along the wall for privacy. Most would probably be surprised that Naruto knew anything about the art of Fuinjutsu. However, ever since he learned Kyuubi was sealed inside of him, he felt it would be a good idea to learn them. That way, if anything happened to his seal, he would be able to do something about it. The blonde wasn't very far along in seals yet though, only being capable of making basic and a few moderately difficult seals. But he was getting there. With that done, Naruto entered the seal to speak with Kyuubi. Birth of the new Demon King. Naruto opened his eyes and walked through the cage, where Kyuubi was waiting in a kneeled posture with her head bowed in submission. "What is it you wish of me, Naruto-sama?" Kyuubi asked. Naruto resisted the urge to groan. "First, I want you to drop the sama crap. I hate titles, just call me Naruto." Kyuubi looked up at him with something akin to shock, but before she could speak, Naruto started talking again. "The second thing you could do is stop bowing to me. I have yet to actually do anything seriously worthwhile that would call for such a show of respect." "I can't do either of those, Naruto-sama," Kyuubi responded with a shake of her head. "Not only are you the descendant of Raisin, the most powerful of the three demon kings." "And I couldn't care less," Naruto interrupted. "Until I proved myself worthy of being Raisin Ajizan's heir, you will not call me Naruto-sama." "I cannot do that, Naruto-sama," the red-headed demoness said again. "You may not feel as if you have earned it, but the fact is that you are Raisin-sama's heir. Anything less than giving you the utmost respect is unbecoming of a demon." Naruto growled under his breath. He mumbled a few choice words that Kyuubi only picked up thanks to her enhanced hearing. They weren't very pretty words, and the redhead was unsure whether she should flinch or giggle at the profanities the blonde was spouting. It was so nostalgic. "Fine," he ground out at last, breathing out a deep sigh. "We'll discuss this later. I didn't come here to talk to you about that anyways." He crossed his arms and looked at Kyuubi, his gaze hardening. "You are going to tell me everything you know about my mother, my father, and Madara. You will leave nothing out." "Right," Kyuubi said. She tried hard not to shiver at his tone and the power he was unleashing. Not only was it slightly frightening, but for a demon like her it was highly arousing. To a demon, power is everything, and those who have power are often the most desirable mates. With his new changes and demonic heritage unlocked, Naruto, like Raisin, was power incarnate. Kyuubi did her best to shake those thoughts off, however, as she knew she was not worthy of Naruto after what happened to him thanks to her. She quickly forced herself to get back on track, even though she had no desire to remember that time. Where to begin? I suppose I should begin with some basic information about myself. Originally, I was a simple member of the Kitsune clan, which are a clan of highly regarded demons in Makai that specialize in illusions and elemental manipulation. During one of my outings to the human world, I was struck by a very powerful chakra. I ended up passing out, and when I woke up I had 9 tails instead of my 3. "What does this have to do with what I asked?" asked Naruto, raising an eyebrow. It sounded like an interesting story, and he would probably want to hear more of it later. But right now, all he wanted was to know about his parents and the night Madara had forced her to attack the village. "There is a point, Naruto-sama," Kyuubi said with a placating gesture. "I promise." The blonde deliberated for a moment before nodding. Kyuubi continued. "When I got back and my family saw my 9 tails, I became the new head of the Kitsune clan. You see, no one else has ever possessed 9 tails." The amount of tails a kitsune gains is equal to the amount of power they possess, and none had ever gained more than 8. In my clan we have a legend, one that states the kitsune to gain 9 tails shall become the ultimate power and lead our clan to prosperity. In a way that did happen. With my power I was on par with 2 of the demon kings of Makai, able to fight them one-on-one and hold my own. Only Raisin was stronger than me, but he had recognized my power, and I had been given a place at his side as his second in command. Life was good for my clan after that, she continued in fond remembrance. Her eyes glazed over slightly and a soft smile touched her lips. Even though Naruto was still slightly angry at her for attacking the village, manipulated or not, he couldn't help but think about just how beautiful she looked right now. Kyubi was unaware of his thoughts, and thus continued without interruption. I held one of the most prestigious positions and my clan was highly respected by others. However, after Raisin died my clan was forced to take up the vacuum he filled. We were successful, for a while, but the power gap between Raisin and myself was vast, and it wasn't long before those seeking to gain power for themselves plotted against us. The 2 demon kings decided to work together, and created an army that marched on our territory. We fought, of course, we fought with everything we had. But in the end, it wasn't enough. Most, if not all of my clan was killed, and I was cast out. I ended up making my way to the human world, where I decided to live until I was able to retake the throne that I had been tasked with guarding. During that time I traveled a lot, never staying in one place for too long. Everything was more or less fine, until he came. The way Kyubi spat out the word he with such vitriol let Naruto know just how much she hated Madara. It happened so fast that I barely remember what happened. He somehow placed me under his control, and then reverse summoned me to a plane where I was forced into battle against Senju Hashirama. As you know, that battle ended up with me being sealed. I was rather angry about that. Now, not only would it be impossible for me to gain enough strength to retake Raisin-sama's throne, but I was sealed in some damn Nigen. For years I tried to escape that prison. However, all my attempts ended in failure. Worse still, that woman was able to use some kind of chakra chains to keep me tied down like some kind of animal. Kyubi's breathing had become slightly ragged as she remembered how she had been treated by that woman. Oh, how she hated the looks of pity she had received. Mito hadn't even attempted to realize why she was so angry, just went on assuming she was a dangerous beast with endless hatred. It pissed her off the no end. By this point, there was an aura of red yukai leaking from the red head. Her braided hair was swinging about agitatedly, much like her 9 foxtails were also doing. Realizing she was losing control of her emotions, Kyubi closed her eyes and took several deep breaths. After a few seconds, she continued. I had hoped that I would be able to escape when she died, but it seemed they realized what would happen and decided they didn't want to lose me. I ended up being sealed inside of your mother when Mito was at the end of her life. I had almost given up hope of escaping when Madara let me loose and, well, you know the rest. Naruto nodded. Everything made sense now. From the reason he had the Kyubi sealed into him, to the reason why the Kyubi had ever been sealed in the first place. It was hard to believe. Had Kyubi told anyone else, not that she would, they likely wouldn't have believed her. But Naruto, having already met Raisin, was more or less forced to believe her words. They did, after all, coincide with what his ancestor said. I appreciate you telling me this, he said at last, shaking the lingering thoughts away so he could address the woman in front of him. While I find that a part of this is your fault, here Kyubi flinched, I find that it is impossible to place all the blame on you. When the redhead turned wide eyes on him, Naruto grinned. Most of these troubles seem to originate from that human, Uchiha Madara. Had he not come, I doubt you would have been sealed. Do not get me wrong though, while I do not blame you for my parents' death, nor do I hold any ill will, I find myself disappointed by how you let a human control you. It was a bit odd to Naruto that he was no longer thinking of himself as human. He knew he wasn't human, of course, but he had expected a harder transition with more angst and denial. Though he wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Best to just be thankful he didn't have any problems being a demon. Kyubi nodded and bowed her head. Naruto was being more merciful than she had expected. But she was thankful to him, and decided she would use this opportunity to improve her standing in the blonde's eyes and serve him as best she could. I understand, Naruto-sama. Now then, Raisin Ajisen said something about binding you to me so that you could help me reach my full potential. It was here, finally, Then Naruto noticed Kyuubi's blush, and despite feeling a little unsure about its meaning pressed on. So how do we do this binding thing? Well, Kyuubi's blush deepened a bit. Despite having had kids of her own before gaining her nine-tails, she had never done the binding ritual. Her marriage, for lack of a better word, had been one of convenience. While the Kitsune clan had been powerful and well-respected, the truth was there were very few Kitsune, numbering somewhere around 200 or 300 before they had been wiped out. Well, you have to. She mumbled something under her breath that Naruto could not catch even with his enhanced hearing. What was that? Naruto asked. You have to mark me, Kyuubi said, her blush increasing in hue. Naruto's eyes fluttered a bit as his mind went through some of the pieces of information that Raisin had imprinted in his mind. It was an odd process, and it seemed that learning more about his heritage required keywords being said. Otherwise, he was sure that the information would have come to him sooner, and he would not have had to ask about the process. What he didn't know was that Raisin had done this so that the blonde's mind would not overload from gaining more information than it was prepared to handle. Given that there was thousands of years' worth of knowledge locked away in Naruto's head now, it was probably a good idea. He found what he was looking for, and soon enough, he was blushing as well. Aerodemon, Naruto muttered. He turned to look at Kyuubi, who squirmed under his gaze. We don't have to do this if you don't want to, he told her. While he had accepted his demon heritage, he wasn't quite sure he was ready to accept binding someone to him like that. Kyuubi shook her head. I really don't mind, Naruto-sama. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You mean to tell me you don't care if I basically mark you as my property? Kyuubi looked down at the ground, gaining a sudden interest in her toes. I have already sworn myself to you. This would not make a difference. Naruto sighed as he walked up to her. Are you sure about this? Kyuubi said nothing but gave him a nod. Naruto sighed as he went through his mind about what he knew on marking. He frowned in thought as he came upon how it was applied. There were two ways to mark someone. The first was the mark of a slave, usually from a demon biting someone on their arm or calf. In many ways it reminded him of how cattle were branded when he had a D-rank mission at a farm once. The second was the mark of a life mate. This was always located on the neck and was usually done during intercourse. Naruto grinned as a thought occurred in his mind. The blonde didn't know how it came about, but he decided it was a good idea, and it would be funny to see Kyuubi's reaction. Acting too quickly for Kyuubi to do anything, Naruto wrapped an arm around her waist, pulled her close and sank his fangs into her neck. Na Naruto-sama! Kyuubi squeaked in surprise. That soon turned into a moan of ecstasy, however, as Naruto flooded her body with his demonic yukai. While it was not as intense a feeling as it would have been if they had been in intercourse, it was far more intense than anything she had ever felt. Her entire body shuddered as a wave of absolute ecstasy washed over her. Had she been in her right mind, Kyuubi would have embarrassed when she came just from feeling the blonde's power coursing through her body. As it was, the only person who noticed was Naruto when he picked up the scent of her flowing juices. If he didn't have his fangs still in the vixen's neck, he would have grinned. After nearly a minute of this, in which Kyuubi felt like she was in one continuous orgasm, the redhead's mind went blank and she blacked out from the overwhelming feeling. Naruto held her to him as she passed out and gently set her down. The blonde sat himself down and pulled the woman's head into his lap. He took a moment to examine her features. Kyuubi really was a beautiful woman, he decided. Absently, he wondered why he wasn't blushing from that thought. Had it been just a few hours ago, he would have been a mess for even thinking something even remotely perverted. As it was, he felt no real embarrassment about his thoughts, nor was he embarrassed about his desire to mate with Kyuubi. Which was another surprise, considering just moments ago he had still been angry at her for his parents' death. These thoughts left him, and the blonde blinked in surprise when he saw himself begin to fade from the seal. Birth of the new Demon King. Naruto opened his eyes and found himself in his room again. He blinked a few times as the memory of his clone working on the seals hit him. It was very strange, like seeing out of another pair of eyes that were not his own. Of course, given that they were his clones, they technically were him, but it didn't change the fact that the whole thing felt weird. I wonder why I never noticed that I get the memories of my clones before? Naruto asked himself. He'd been using the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu for months now, ever since he had learned it from the forbidden scroll of sealing during that trumped-up academy graduation exam that traitor Mizuki said he could do. It was the jutsu he had used the most ever since. Then again, that could be why. Whenever he made clones, it was never just one or two. Naruto normally spammed out several dozen at the very least. Perhaps that was why he never noticed. He simply used so many of them that the feedback effect was negated so as not to put undue stress on the mind. Whatever the case was, he would need to think of a use for this new ability soon. Before he could think further on the subject, his mind was pulled away by something unusual happening. He looked down in surprise when he saw a red chakra coming out of his seal, and became shocked when it began to form a shape that he recognized as distinctly feminine. Soon enough the shape was completed and Naruto found a still sleeping Kyuubi lying on his lap. The first thing he noticed about her was the content look on her face as she dozed. Her beautiful features were carved into a content smile that made her look like she was having a very pleasant dream. The second thing he noticed was that she was completely bereft of clothes. Naruto would have wondered why, but in that moment found he truly could not care. The blonde found his eyes wandering over Kyuubi's form, the two large, beautiful mounds that made up her bosom, with their dark pink nipples and areola. Her breasts rose and fell in time with her breathing, jiggling ever so slightly to show that they were firm yet soft. Her thin, lithe waist flared out into perfectly proportionate hips and a firm ass. Mile-long legs that seemed to go on forever and a patch of red pubic hair stood out just a little bit above her sacred area. As it was only through sheer will, which even as a human had been firmer than the strongest steel, kept him from mating with her. While getting his urges under control, he wondered how she was out of the seal, but given how soon she had come out since he had given her his mating mark, he figured it likely coincided with that. He created a shadow clone with his demonic yukai so that it would last longer. Being careful not to jostle the sleeping demoness, Naruto stood up and gently set Kyuubi in the bed. He was about to let go of her, but Kyuubi, as if sensing him leaving, latched onto him, pulling him down on top of her. Before he was able to react, Kyuubi rolled over so she was now on top, where she began to cling and nuzzle into his chest, sighing in content. Naruto soon became distinctly aware of the feminine assets pressing themselves against his body and was hard kept not to pass out, or keep Naruto Jr. from waking up. He turned to his clone and glared when it began to snicker, continued to laugh, and "I'll use the replacement jutsu on you." "You say that like it would be a bad thing," his clone said. The clone had a point, though Naruto didn't appreciate the smart-ass comment from it. "Just go. Transform yourself into a random shinobi and get some real clothes. Remember, get something that will be concealing for now." Naruto looked down at Kyuubi. "Also make sure to buy some clothes for Kyuubi. Her size is 98-48-96. I wonder how I knew that." He asked himself, before determining the reason was unimportant. All right, his clone said dismissively. The Naruto clone looked at him, gave his creator a cheeky grin. Have fun being an oversized plushie. Naruto did not get to say anything as his clone ran over to the window and disappeared in a burst of speed. With nothing else to do, Naruto sighed as he continued trying not to allow his lower head do his thinking. Eventually exhaustion got to him, and he fell asleep as well. Birth of the new Demon King. The next morning was rather interesting for both Naruto and Kyuubi. The two had refused to look at each other all morning. Well, Kyuubi refused to look at Naruto. Every time he had tried to get her attention, she would look at him for a second, before flushing bright red and looking away. It was clear she was embarrassed, and Naruto couldn't help but find her flustered state adorable. Naruto sighed as he finished drying off and got dressed in his new clothes. A pair of dark black pants that were slightly flared out to hide his new muscles. A black sleeveless shirt, bandages that he had managed to dye orange wrapped around his arms and legs. Despite his new demonic blood, his love for orange could not be denied. A pair of black closed-toed ninja sandals with steel tips. Black fingerless gloves with a non-reflective gray metal plating on the back. Black forearm protectors and a new black headband. Over all of this he threw a long black cloak that reached down to his ankles and came with a hood that hid his face, and wore a face mask similar to Kakashi's. Finished changing, Naruto walked out of the restroom to see Kyuubi look up, only to look away a second later with a bright red face. "It's your turn," Naruto said. While he wasn't embarrassed about waking up with a naked Kyuubi on top of him like the vixen was, he knew that being in such close physical contact after having gone so long without was going to take some getting used to. He couldn't even begin to imagine how Kyuubi felt. After all, she had been sealed for Kami only knew how long. Kyuubi mumbled a thanks as she walked into the bathroom. Naruto heard the shower turn on and decided to get some more sleep. Moving over to the bed, he flopped on it and closed his eyes. Birth of the new Demon King. Kyuubi sighed as she got out of the shower, feeling much more in control of herself than she had the half an hour before she had first got into the shower. It had been nice, luxuriating in the feel of the warm water stinging her back, the way the droplets had traced patterns down her skin. It had been so long since she had actually taken a shower, having been sealed inside of Naruto for nearly 13 years, Kushina for over 20 years and Mito for over 80, so she had taken this opportunity to get as much enjoyment out of the relatively simple act as possible. Truly, some people didn't know how good they had it until it was gone. Wrapping a towel around herself, the elegant beauty made her way over to the mirror and looked at her reflection. Not much had changed about her since the time she had been sealed. In fact, almost nothing had changed about her despite having been in her fox form for nearly 200 years. It was nice to see that the abuse she had suffered from the humans constantly stealing and using her power had not caused her body to suffer in any way, shape, or form. Though she realized that her powers would likely be out of practice for some time to come. The only thing about her that was different, which also happened to be the thing that made her blush the moment her eyes landed on it, was the mating mark that Naruto had placed on her sitting prominently near the junction between her neck and collarbone. It looked like the spiral she recognized as the symbol for the Uzumaki clan, but surrounding it were several odd lines that reminded her of the tattoo under Raisin's left eye. She let one of her fingers delicately trace along the mark, admiring it and allowing herself to daydream, if only for a moment. When Raisin had defeated her in combat with relative ease, she had known then and there that he was a demon any demoness like herself would be willing to give all her tails for just to mate with. It had gotten even worse when she had become his second in command and formed what amounted to a fangirlish crush on the most powerful demon king. Despite her crush, however, nothing had ever amounted to it. Raisin had fallen in love with some filthy Nijin, and she had been forced to watch him wither and die. Now his descendant, her former host, had come into his own demonic heritage. In the short time since Naruto's rebirth, he had proven to be Raisin's descendant. While the blonde had some of his own personality quirks, such as his love for orange and ramen, he was very much Raisin's descendant. He even acted just like the man, from what she had seen. Due to the blonde's new attitude, it was no wonder she was feeling so flustered around him, and she couldn't help but think about what it would be like to truly mate with the blonde. Reality struck a second later, and Kyuubi remembered her place. She had made Naruto's life hell, and didn't deserve to be with someone like him. Looking at the mark again, she wondered why Naruto had given her a mating mark rather than a mark of servitude. Surely for one such as her, the simple mark of a slave would have been more fitting. After all the horrible things her presence in his life had caused, she did not deserve to be treated kindly. With a sigh, Kyuubi shook the depressing thoughts away. It would not do for her to question her master on things like this just to satiate her curiosity. What was done, and nothing would change that. She would simply have to accept her role in Naruto's life and help him as best she could to atone for her sins. With these thoughts in mind, Kyuubi moved to hang up her towel on the rack. However, as her eyes strayed the bathroom, she quickly realized that something was missing. She had left her clothes outside. Moving over to the door, she opened a small crack and looked out. Naruto was lying on the bed and looked like he was sleeping. That was good. The last thing she needed was for him to be awake and see her in such an embarrassing state. Looking around a little more, Kyuubi saw the new clothes Naruto had bought her. She quickly squashed down the warm feeling that thought brought her, lying on a chair several feet from the bed that the blonde was laying on. Wanting to get her clothes quickly, Kyuubi rushed into the room and grabbed the clothes she was going to wear. She had just turned around to make her way back into the restroom, only to stop when a voice spoke up behind her. "You know, if I didn't know any better, I'd say you have an exhibitionist streak." Kyuubi turned and blushed heavily as she saw Naruto, wide awake, and with a cat that ate the canary look on his face. Naruto's grin increased as he spotted the blush. "Or is it that you just wanted to give me a good show?" Kyuubi let out an eep as she raced into the restroom, completely embarrassed at her master having seen her in her nude state. While it was true that her body belonged to him, she had only ever been seen nude by one person. And after she had done her duty for the clan and had a kit, they never even saw each other afterwards. Naruto chuckled a bit. It was so amusing seeing the woman, who just so happened to be the strongest Biju in existence, blushing like a little schoolgirl. However, as soon as the thought came and went, confusion took its place. Why had he just done that? It didn't make sense. He had never flirted or teased a girl before, ever. The closest he had gotten to flirting would be how he would loudly ask Sakura out on a date when he had still been an attention-seeking idiot. It was almost like he had another person inside of his mind creating all of these thoughts and desires, telling him to do things like tease Kyubi when she had come out of the restroom and telling him to mate with her to make the mark on her complete. What he didn't know was that due to his demonic heritage and the power he now had flowing through him, as well as his potential being unlocked, his mind was beginning to reform into what it would have been had the hack Fuin, 8 trigram sealing style, not sealed up his demonic properties. This gave him an enhanced IQ, along with a libido that would put any human or demon to shame. His little teasing episode a few seconds ago had been nothing more than instincts talking. He decided then and there not to worry. Whatever was happening did not seem bad. He had learned long ago not to look a gift horse in the mouth, and this certainly seemed like a gift. After all, who else can say they can make the Kyubi blush? He thought with a chuckle. He was shaken from his thoughts when the restroom door opened. Looking up, he saw a still red-in-the-face Kyubi, only now she was clothed, much to his disappointment. She was wearing the red kimono he had gotten her, which was similar to the one she had in his mindscape, except there was no V-cut to show her cleavage. That was a bit disappointing, but he kept that thought to himself. Naruto smiled at her, as he let his eyes wander over her body, feeling a smirk come to his lips as he felt her embarrassment increase further. He could almost scent her embarrassment pouring off her in waves. Or were those pheromones? "You look good in that," Naruto complimented honestly. Kyubi looked away as she desperately tried to get rid of the increasing redness on her face. It didn't work, obvious from the way Naruto chuckled at her, but there wasn't much she could do. Thank you," she stuttered, inwardly cursing how weak and flustered she sounded. Why is it that I can't seem to stop from blushing around him, she wondered. In all her 1,000 years of life she had been proclaimed as one of the most beautiful women in the demon world, even by those who were not of Kitsune descent. Men had doted on her hand and foot in the hopes of getting her in bed with them. She had turned down every single one. In fact, had it not been for her father, she would have never gotten married. Yet this boy, who, despite being the next heir to one of the 3 thrones of Makai and the descendant of the strongest demon to ever grace the earth, was still only a boy nearly 988 years her junior, somehow made her heart flutter several thousand miles per second. It shouldn't have been possible. "Kyubi," Naruto said, getting the young-looking woman's attention. He gestured for her to sit next to him, lightly patting the spot beside him on the bed. Kyubi hesitated for a moment, before doing as asked. Despite her embarrassment, the beautiful redhead managed to retain her natural grace, somehow making the act of sitting down look like an art form. For a while the two were silent. Naruto just watched her for a moment before deciding to speak. "The first thing I need to ask, is there some way you can hide your presence? If people saw me with a girl they had never met before, it would get pretty suspicious," he explained as he saw her quizzical look. Kyubi nodded. "Yes, if you want I can use a Kitsune illusion to become invisible. Only those who hold the Dijitsu would be able to see through it. However, even they would not be able to see me, just the energy I was emitting." Naruto thought about that for a moment before he shook his head. "That would not work. Both my teammate and my sensei posses the Sharingan, so they would get suspicious if they saw a mass of energy following me. I can also transform into my full Christian form and act similar to that dog that follows the cocky boy who reminds me of you," Kyubi suggested. "Hey," Naruto said in an indignant voice, "I'm not that bad." Kyubi grinned, pleased that she could get him back for his teasing this morning. "Maybe not as bad anymore, but you were definitely a loudmouth until recently." Naruto grimaced. "Yeah, well, a stupid Jinchuriki is a Jinchuriki that isn't perceived as a threat and gets beaten far less." Kyubi winced at that, knowing that was the true reason he had always acted as he had. Naruto sighed when he noticed her crestfallen expression. He placed an arm around her shoulder in a half-embrace. "Don't worry about, I already said it's not your fault." Kyubi smiled, not resisting the blonde's pull as she laid her head on his shoulder. She knew Naruto was likely to embarrass her by bringing this up sometime along the line, but for the moment his presence was comforting. "We should probably get going," Naruto said after a moment's silence. Kyubi lifted her head and looked at him. "Get going where?" Naruto gave her a grin. "Well, Sakura and Sasuke are likely to be awake by now. They'll probably come looking for me at some point. And I don't know about you, but I have no desire to be anywhere near them right now. Naruto stood up. So I'm going to find some place to train until the second stage ends. Or at least some place those two won't think to look until the next stage of the exam. Kyubi gave a nod of understanding as she was engulfed in a red light. When the light died down, Kyubi had turned into a small fox kit. The demoness hopped on Naruto's shoulder. She wrapped herself around Naruto's neck like a scarf as the blonde put up his hood. Naruto left the room to find a place to go train, hoping Kyubi could help him better understand his powers before the second stage ended. Birth of the new Demon King. Naruto resisted a sigh as he ignored the stares he was receiving. Most of the people there were probably wondering who he was, or why he had changed so much. He knew that most people had heard about what had happened in the Forest of Death from Ino, who had always been the biggest gossip queen in the academy. So he could not blame people for staring at him. Still, it was very annoying and he wished they would stop. Maybe if I cracked a few skulls in. He shook his head, and instead of paying attention to the stares he was receiving, Naruto looked around to see who his competition was. Aside from his team, 5 other Leaf teams had made it past the second stage, most of which were rookie genin teams like his own. There was also the Oto team that had given him their scroll. The man who Sasuke had beaten before he had woken up was looking very surly, with something of a petulant pout on his face, and his arms were in a sling. The mummy, Naruto had taken to calling him, was hard to get a read on, though he didn't look too worried if his lazy posture was any indication. It was the female of their group that garnered most of his attention, however. The girl looked uncomfortable for some reason, and Naruto got the distinct feeling that she did not want to be there. The only other team to have made it past the second stage was the team from Suna. The one known as Gaara was much shorter than the average male, standing somewhere around 146, maybe 148 centimeters in height. He had short, spiky, auburn-colored hair, and a pair of jade-green eyes with mostly invisible pupils. 2 things Naruto noticed about him immediately were the large, black rings around his eyes, making the kid look like he was suffering from insomnia, and the red kanji for love on his forehead where his forelocks were parted in order for the symbols to be displayed. He looked agitated, and Naruto could practically taste the bloodlust rolling off of him. However, very little of Naruto's attention was actually focused on the redhead. No, his mind was more focused on the sandy-haired blonde that was his female teammate and sister, and the Oto Kunoichi. While neither could compare to Kyubi, they were both rather beautiful, and they were still young, so their bodies were only just filling out. He looked over to his left and saw the female weapon user of Team 10, who was also very attractive in her own right. Naruto frowned as he felt his urges welling up. It didn't help that both Kurenai and Anko were there as well. Fortunately, he managed to bring them back to heel with a few deep breaths. He was going to have to work on keeping his body under control, or he was liable to do something he'd regret later. Sighing, the blonde tried to focus on the area around him. They were in a large theater that looked like it was some kind of training area. He, along with the other genin, were standing on a stone-tiled surface. Up in front of them was none other than Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was standing on a slightly raised platform. Behind Sarutobi stood the proctors Anko and Ibiki, who were looking out amongst the crowd. The Jonin sensei were also there, along with several Chunin who were acting as judges. The only thing Naruto couldn't really get over was the large pair of forearms that were sticking out of the wall behind the Hokage and proctors, the 2 appendages having moved until their hands were together and forming a ram's seal. Really, how weird was that? Out of 78 people at the start, 21 of them actually made it in time, Anko thought with a frown. She sighed. When I said I was going to cut them in half, I was thinking more along the lines of single digits. Anko looked around at all of the genin present when her eyes landed on the mysteriously cloaked figure. The thing I can't figure out is who that is. I heard the rumors of the seemingly transformation of the Kyubigaki, but I'm not sure if this can actually be him. It's amazing that this many made it, and for so many of them to be rookies. Sarutobi eyed the Jonin squad leaders. It's no wonder they were all nominated. Sarutobi looked over the genin before his eyes landed on the spot where Naruto was supposed to be. In his place was a genin who seemed to have caused a lot of commotion, and according to rumor, compliments of one Yamanaka Ino, defeated Sasuke in his cursed sealed state. As if feeling Sarutobi's eyes on him, Naruto turned his head and stared. The Sandame found himself almost frozen as power flowed out of those blue eyes. Despite the feeling of overwhelming power from them, the old Hokage was able to tell it was Naruto. There may be some truth to those rumors. I'll have to talk to him after the preliminaries. To everyone who made it this far, congratulations in passing the second stage of the Chunin exams, Anko said. Listen carefully as Hokage-sama explains the third stage of these exams. Before I explain the third stage of these exams to you, there is something I would like you all to know, Sarutobi said by way of introduction. That is the true reason for these exams, that seemed to catch many of the Chunin hopefuls off guard. The only one who did not seem to be caught off guard was Naruto. Not because he knew where the Sandaime was going with this, but quite simply because he didn't care. Instead, the blonde shinobi turned his thoughts inward, connecting his mind to Kyuubi's. Nekyuchan, can you teach me more about my powers after this stage ends? Asked Naruto. Kyuubi was so glad her fur was red, or Naruto would have seen her blushing up a storm from the new pet name and affectionate suffix. Despite her embarrassment, she dutifully informed him of what he would eventually learn. There are many things I will teach you aside from controlling your power. Most of what you will focus on for now are speed techniques and energy techniques. They are standard things demons know, but are the building blocks for greater and more powerful attacks. Naruto nodded. When you say speed techniques, what do you mean by that? Kyuubi moved a bit to get more comfortable around Naruto's neck, though she was also careful not to let herself be seen. Basic teleportation, it's something all demons can do to an extent. The more power you have, the better you can do it. Of course, it also requires good control over your yokai. I see, Naruto said. Hearing Kyuubi talk about a technique designed to increase one's speed intrigued him. He knew from his reading that the Yondaime was famous for his Hiraishin, Flying Thunder God. A jutsu that teleported him to a kunai with a shiki on it. It was what gave him the nickname Kuroi Senku, Yellow Flash, during the Third Great Ninja War. If the demons had something like that, it would be a useful power to have in his arsenal. The blonde was snapped back to reality as Sarutobi finished his speech. Before we begin the test, there is one thing I must tell you. Sarutobi looked at the genin standing below him. This is not just a test. It is a life-risking battle with your dreams and prestige on the line. I don't care about any of this, Gaara said. Despite his monotone voice, Naruto could sense his aggravation. Just get to the point and tell about these life-risking battles. Actually, Hokage-sama. As the referee, please allow me to explain the match, said a jonin who appeared crouching before the Sandaime. Very well then, Sarutobi said with a nod, taking a step back. The man turned around and Naruto gained an incredulous look at his sickly appearance. The man looked like he would fall over any moment. He was dressed in the uniform of the standard jonin. The only difference was his headband was being used as a bandana. He also had a sword strapped to his back. Naruto thought the man should be in the hospital, not participating as a proctor in the Chunin exams. Hello everyone, I'm Gekahate. Before we can begin the third test, I need to inform you that there will be a preliminary round. Why do we have to have a preliminary? Asked a confused Sakura. Why can't all the people who made it this far continue? Hate coughed into his hand as he looked over at Sakura for a moment, before explaining himself. Because the first two exams may have been too easy this year, we just have too many people. According to the rules of the Chunin exam, we must hold a preliminary to reduce the number of people participating for the third test. As Hokage-sama stated, there will many prominent guests attending, and if the fights take too long we may run out of time. Anyway, for those who aren't feeling well or those who like quitting, please step forward now, since we will be starting the preliminaries immediately. Kabuto raised his hand. Proctor-san, I quit. Hate nodded. Very well then, you may go. As Kabuto walked off, a voice spoke up, catching the attention of the entire room. So you're leaving, huh, Kabuto? Naruto snorted. I guess I shouldn't be surprised you failed 7 times. You probably gave up each time you made it this far. You're such a pussy. He chuckled as he saw the white-haired genin glare at him. With his enhanced senses, Naruto could easily smell the scent of snakes wafting off of him. They reminded him of that woman in the Forest of Death, who after thinking about it realized that it could not have been woman at all, given that the person could summon snakes. It was easy to tell who had attacked him after that. After all, that man had been a candidate for 4th Hokage at one point. And if there was anything Naruto knew about, it was anything and everything Hokage. Kabuto grit his teeth as the cloaked blonde insulted him, but calmed himself. After all, it would not be a good idea if he showed his true skill, or give the Hokage reason to believe he was a spy. As Kabuto calmly walked towards the arena door, he smirked. "Your time will come soon, Naruto-kun, and when it does, I'll be there to watch." Sarutobi frowned as he watched Kabuto walk through the door, Naruto's words ringing in his ears. The blonde's comment, inane as it might have been, had put him on alert. The Sandaime decided he would have some ANBU trail Kabuto once the preliminaries ended. With Kabuto gone, Hei turned to the rest of the genin to see if anyone would quit. When it was clear they would not, he began to explain the rules of the preliminaries to them. Basically, the matches would be one-on-one. The fight would continue until someone was unconscious, gave up, or was killed. The names of who would be fighting were decided randomly, and shown by an electronic screen on the wall above and behind the Hokage. Once the rules were explained, the screen shuffled through names before landing on 2 names. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Engulfing Silence for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.